Okay, I want to welcome everybody. This is something to talk about from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, and several times a week we get together and talk about all kinds of things. Today we're going to be talking about um, an effort called Taking a Week Without Driving, which may sound uh, a little crazy, but it will make a lot more sense when you start to think about the Week Without Driving Challenge and what it can mean for all of us. And we'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to thank our um, sponsor, which helps with programs here at the Senior Community Center, including something to talk about. Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which are up on Rolling Bay. They have assisted living, and they have independent living, and they have memory care all there, and they are accepting residents, and they have day stay and respite programs. If you'd like to learn more or schedule a tour, it's 360-594-1010. Also, we always like to begin our get-togethers acknowledging that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water, who have lived on the waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We are grateful for their hospitality, and we honor them. The Week Without Driving Challenge is coming up in October, and Anna Zevarts from Disability Rights Washington and County Commissioner Christine Rolfes are here today to tell us a little bit about it. Would you be willing to start us off, Anna?
Of course. Hi, everyone. Anna here, she, her pronouns, and I'm excited to be here. I direct the Disability Mobility Initiative, which is a program that's part of Disability Rights Washington. And I'm joining you from our offices in downtown Seattle, but we're a statewide organization and organize the Disability Mobility Initiative specifically works with people who can't afford to drive or can't physically drive or can't drive for whatever reason throughout Washington state to make sure that we can still access our communities, get where we need to go, stay connected. And that's really the heart of what we do and why we have hosted the Week Without Driving Challenge for this is our third year, for the last 3 years, and are excited to share more about it.
One thing that I, looking over the materials, found was that you were it was basically a statewide effort, but it's gone national. So tell me a little bit about how interest has grown on this project and what its purpose is.
For sure. Yeah. So we know here in Washington state that 1 out of 4 people in our state can't drive or can't afford to drive. It's actually almost a third of residents of our state. So there's a lot of people. And we know this thanks to some funding from our state legislature to do some research around the demographics of non-drivers. And that has really helped us focus on the fact that there's many of us out there for whom driving isn't an easy option or isn't an option at all. And we wanted to help our elected leaders and policymakers understand some of the challenges that we experience to get our needs met. And so that's where the idea came from. We started it out in 2021 and invited folks from all over the state to join us. Had some really wonderful participation. Last year, it grew from there. I think we had more than 400 people joining us from Washington state, including more than 50 elected leaders. And we had 15 different transit agencies from throughout the state hosting it and promoting it. This year, it's gone national. And we actually even had some international interest as well. And that's really exciting. We have a partnership this year with America Walks, which is a national pedestrian advocacy organization. It's actually currently led by former Seattle Mayor Mike McGinn. And he saw how powerful the Week Without Driving Challenge was here as far as its ability to help our elected leaders understand the priorities and the needs of non-drivers. And so he helped us by dedicating a staff person and hiring a national organizer to help do this outreach. And so that's happening this year. I think that we have more than 50 groups from 30 different states. I was actually looking at the list this morning, and it's really exciting hosting the challenge. And we're right now sort of putting together our list of elected leaders and other high profile folks who are participating. But we're pretty excited about it to see it grow and know that it's something that started here in Washington state, but is something that advocates in other parts of the country find useful as well. And I guess one other thing. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I was just going to say that Commissioner Rolfus, you are on the call. I wondered if you got involved as a state senator, and if that's sort of where you enter the picture, and what you think as a commissioner you can do for us in Kitsap County to highlight this program.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Reed. So first of all, I'll start off by saying, just as a citizen, as a resident of Kitsap County, my family has always been committed to transit, riding, and bike commuting. We purposely live in a home that's on a school bus route and a Kitsap transit route so that we could be a one-car family for as long as possible, and close enough that my husband could ride his bike to the ferry dock to commute. We're now in our 50s, and I'm going to just say publicly, he's gotten soft and he doesn't ride his bike anymore. But that was part of our decision to live where we live. So when someone reached out to me last year, I'm going to say it was Marcia, but it may have been a couple of people. I was really excited to see that this was something people were talking about. And to be truthful, I hadn't thought about it in terms of people with disabilities or seniors or people who couldn't drive. I had always thought about it as a way for our family to save money by not needing to own a car, and as a way to combat I guess to bring down my carbon emissions, right? So my husband and I literally would say, hey, we had a climate gas-free day, back 20 years ago. So when Marcia reached out to ask me to participate last year as a voice of people with disabilities or who just can't drive, that was a really good reminder for me that there are many, many reasons that we should be creating communities that are walkable and accessible, whether by transit or good and safe sidewalks.
And you're talking about Marcia Cutting,
I'm sorry, yes, Marcia Cutting, our local leader in all things accessibility related.
Yeah.
So the last year when folks reached out to me, it was like 3 days before the week. And as an elected person, I'd already put together my calendar, and I just wasn't going to rearrange all of my meetings to participate. That wasn't fair to the people that I'd committed to. But I said to her, let me know earlier next year. And so she did. And I'm sad to say that I again looked at my calendar, and I told her last week, I'm like a poser because I'm not really going to be able to do it for the whole week. But I committed to her that I would find the routes I needed to take in order to try to pull it off. So having said that, having just admitted up front that I'm not going to be fully participating, I do want to say that the County Board of Commissioners is passing a proclamation next Monday that hopefully we'll have public comment and excitement about, to say that October 2 through 8 is National Week Without Driving. This is a time for people to explore other options, to walk, to bike, to take transit, and to acknowledge how difficult it is for people who can't drive in their daily lives. So I'm hopeful that that this week will be playing a role in helping to start up that conversation in a much more rigorous way.
Thank you, Commissioner Rolfus. And I think that although you said that you won't be able to fully participate, with looking over your materials, Anna, it looked to me like being aware of the challenges that trying to avoid getting in a car is also part of the program. Am I right about that?
You are right about that. Yeah, for sure. And I think, it is really hard, especially with the way our communities are laid out and where our transit exists, where it's safe to bike and walk and roll, how you can get places late at night. Like, those make it really difficult for, folks who are used to be able to drive to get all their needs met. Right. And so we recognize that. And we do recognize that often many people who have taken the challenge do end up needing to drive. And it's actually, I think, still really valuable for them to consider the challenge, just like you are, Commissioner. And I think, one of my favorite conversations I had with an elected leader after the challenge last year was with a council member from Pierce County who was like, I don't know if I even can reflect on it because I ended up driving every single day. My wife had a medical emergency and we had to spend all this time going to doctor's offices and I had to drive her. And I felt so terrible every time I was sitting there waiting in a parking lot. I started to wonder, how would I have gotten to this doctor's appointment if we weren't able to drive, because there wasn't transit. And so he became a huge proponent of pushing for better transit coverage, and also thinking about, how are medical facilities on transit routes or not on transit routes, and what we can do about that to make it easier. So it really is that reflection that I think is so important. Not so much whether you do the challenge or don't do the challenge, but that reflection. And it's also so exciting to hear about the proclamation. So thank you for putting that together and helping make that happen.
One of the things that that Commissioner Rolfes was talking about was putting together a map of trying to think about how you would get from one place to the other, which of course people who don't have single-use personal vehicles have to do all the time. And especially if you're not going somewhere that is on your regular route, if you're on Bainbridge and you have business, a doctor's appointment in Silverdale, and you're trying to use transit to do that, not easy.
Yeah, in our community, just from playing around with it, I live on South Bainbridge and I work in Port Orchard. So Kitsap, I can type in the Kitsap Transit website, you can type in your destination and the time you want to arrive, and it will build your route back for you. So for me, there were 2 routes. I just think this is interesting, so I hope you do too. There were 2 routes. One was all bus, and the other one was a little bit of bus and then mostly ferry. They were both took 3 hours. And for those of us on our side of the water, that is taking into account no delays in the ferry system, which just is very not
Absurd.
you can't count on that, right? And so that's just not a reliable form. You can count on Kitsap Transit, you can count on the buses, but to have to do 2 ferries plus a passenger only ferry to get to my destination in Port Orchard, the odds of everything being on time are just kind of slim. It takes me less than an hour to drive, and it was going to take 3 hours or more to do it without a car.
Yeah, that's definitely what I hear from seniors who are trying to get to doctor's appointments in Silverdale for sure, and probably, needing to go to Port Orchard.
Yeah, no, it literally says but Bainbridge to Poulsbo for the transit transfer 22 stops, and it lists the stops. And then to go to Bremerton, it lists the 58 stops or however many stops. I mean, it's quite a production.
So Anna, I think about the per rider mile problems that our transit people face, trying to make this pencil out in some fashion. And obviously the challenge of getting drivers and all that kind of stuff that we've heard about. In your realistic world, what is the sort of outcome of this in the medium to long term about how we think about transit and transportation?
Yeah, those are really good questions. And, I think I don't have easy answers or one, silver bullet, but I do think having elected leaders think about this is very valuable. And we actually just this morning, an article came out in Bloomberg that we wrote that featured some interviews with elected leaders who have participated previously in the challenge and some of what they took away and the policy changes they're advocating for. And so I can share with you that link. But I think, one thing many people notice is the sidewalk connectivity issue, whether that's in a city or even in more rural areas, not feeling like there's even a safe place to walk or roll outside of your home to get where you need to go. I think, the transit schedules is another one, especially in evenings or late nights. Those are big issues. But, those are issues that I think we need to be thinking about because we do have many people who can't drive already. And we have many people who are aging out of driving. And I just want to hit on a few stats that a friend of mine shared with me. She just published a book called Climate Resilience for an Aging Nation that talks about seniors and mobility as part of that. And she noted that, it's 18% of people over the age of 65 don't drive. And yeah, Americans will spend the last 7 to 10 years of their life unable to safely drive. So those are big numbers. And I think, as many more people in our communities are aging out of driving, we need to be thinking about how we can build communities where we can all get our needs met more easily. And those are longer term conversations, but they're, I think, also important conversations, both for our, abilities to stay connected, but also for our public health and our climate health. So hoping
And
we
I
can
think,
tackle that. Yeah.
I think that when you think about what Commissioner Rolfes was saying about climate concerns was sort of how she got into this. It's like even if you can drive, if you're able to share the ride or figure out some other way to do it, you're gonna use fewer resources. You aren't gonna require two cars in a 2 to 4 person family, right? You're gonna be able to get places you need to go without having to take everything with you. If you're watching this later, the links that Anna talked about are in the link, in sort of the description below. For those of you on the call, they're right there in the chat. Yeah, so I think about that as when you're looking at transit plans, you were saying, for example, sidewalks. And I think, Christine, you were talking a little bit about using the bicycles. If we are putting in bike lanes, maybe we also have to think about people who might be using scooters or wheelchairs as other users of that space, so that we aren't. So we're thinking twice or three times when we're making development decisions. Can you tell me, Anna, a little bit about you said that you're getting national and international interest. Other organizations, have they been calling you, asking you about how you've done this in the past, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it started. We started getting a lot of calls from groups being like, hey, we want to do one in our state. How can we do it? And I didn't have the capacity to really do all that coordination. So the partnership with America Walks is really what has led to that. And the ability to, create a listserv with all these groups. We have weekly meetings, and every weekly meeting is pretty exciting because there are representatives from groups all over the country who are joining and talking about what they're doing and how their outreach is going. I know one place that's close to my heart is Tucson, Arizona. I lived there for a little bit, and there's a group called Living Streets Alliance there that is doing a lot of outreach, and I know just shared a blog post they wrote about it. And so it's really neat to see other advocates figuring out how this can be useful for their work as well. We also have a lot of disability organizations in different parts of the country participating. Access Living in the Chicago area has an ongoing campaign around sidewalks and snow clearing of sidewalks, because snow there is a big deal. And so they're participating and using this as a way to keep moving that work forward. Disability Rights New York is sort of our sister organization in New York City, and they're engaged. So there's a huge list of folks, and it's really exciting to just see the range of places, and, not just big cities, but all over the country.
Well, October 2nd through the 8th, and you're asking people if they use social media to use the hashtag week without driving. And then we can see what other people that we know or don't know might be participating in this. Any other thoughts? You have a comment, Rita, your question?
Yeah, I just have a couple things. I just got to move to downtown Bainbridge, where I've been trying to get. And so I can walk. I'm a walker and can get around. But I think a couple things that maybe policymakers might want to think about is the safety on buses. I grew up in Seattle. I worked in Seattle, lived in downtown Seattle, took buses a lot. I would be very hesitant to take a bus from here, maybe out to the university by myself, just because it doesn't feel as safe. And the thought of someone even, knocking me down or hurting me keeps me from maybe going there. And so I just want people to think about that. The other thing is when you can't get out, it really is hard on your mental health, that you just feel like you can't get out and go. And I think that people don't always realize how devastating that can be. So those are just a couple things to think about.
I definitely hear the safety piece. I think it's something that a lot of people think about, especially later at night or in the dark or in situations that can feel, threatening, or when you're getting harassed. And, that's hard. I also know that, you know, when transit works great and it's not feeling threatening or you're not getting harassed, transit can be a really wonderful public space. And I lived in New York City for many years and recently took my kid back there, and you know, his experience of the subway where there was just lots of people using it all the time was really different and wonderful than some of our experiences here in Seattle of late. So I do think there's you know, transit in itself can be a wonderful experience, and that's what we're really aiming for. But yeah, being stuck at home and that isolation, and yeah, I grew up outside of Olympia in the woods, and it was not fun as someone who couldn't drive when all my friends could and go places. You know, being trapped at home isn't good for anyone. And so we are really hoping to change that by raising awareness around, you know, what are the changes we can make to make our communities work better, and you know, housing affordability in places that are walkable, rollable, transit rich is part of that too.
And I want to put in a plug too for Kitsap Transit's access service, which is, you know, runs a full day on Bainbridge Island regularly, as well as in other places. It's really kind of a dial-a-ride system. People can learn more about it on the Kitsap Transit website, but that's a very individualized approach to transit that's somewhat unique because we are small enough, we're rural enough to need to have that service and dense enough to have a demand for it that helps to pay for it. The Kitsap County is kind of at a sweet spot for that, being essential and kind of paying for itself, or you know, having enough demand. The other thing I want to say, because I would be remiss if I didn't, is that Council Member Leslie Schneider and I were at a function yesterday, and she said I could drop her name in this half hour. She, of course, is a city council member on Bainbridge and very committed to sustainability and not being car reliant. And she and I spend one Tuesday a month at all the same meetings in Bremerton. And so one of those meetings is during the week without driving. And I need to drive that day, but I'm going to give her a ride. And then she's going to use transit to get home. But so Anna knows, we talked about this at our last Kitsap Transit Board meeting, that this week is coming up and we need to be doing our best to promote it. And she turned to me and said, how are we going to get here? So we came up with our plan.
That's really wonderful to hear. And yeah, thanks for the shout out. I've used the Access Transit on Kitsap County and on Bainbridge Island actually before, when I was visiting a non-driver who told me about it. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. During the day, you don't even have to qualify. You can just call and use it, even when you're visiting Kitsap County, which makes it a lot easier. So shout out for Kitsap Transit.
Yeah, we're reintroducing Sunday service too, which we haven't had in, I think, 10 years since the recession. So starting in Bremerton, and it will be moving to Bainbridge probably by next fall as it gets rolled out. You know, they have to hire and train and do all of that. So it's not just like open the spigot and have Sunday service, but it's coming back.
And the link is in the chat or in the box down below the YouTube video. Any final thoughts? I'm marking it down on my calendar and seeing what I can do to stay out of a vehicle between the 6th and the 8th.
2nd and the 8th. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's a whole week, Reed. It's
I'm
hard.
sorry.
It's the 6th or the 8th.
2nd and the 8th. Got it.
Yeah. And it's not that you can't be in a vehicle, right? It's that the idea is, okay, if you are going to go in a vehicle, you're asking someone else to drive and feeling, you know, I think part of that too is like when you ask for favors, it's always a favor, right? And what does that feel like? Yeah. If you have to trade that for something else, or if you have to pay for it. So it can be a really interesting experiment and what it feels like to not have that easy grab your keys and go kind of mobility, and what that means. So thank you, Reed, so much for having us. And yeah, Christine, it's great to have you join and be here promoting it, and for all your support to get this moving in Kitsap County.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, here's to a good week without driving.